that money that comes out of your, the question there was, could you choose not to be forgiven? You'd still pay more if you did that. You'd pay the balance. So it's still going to be a reduction, but you've got to know that there's a looming tax bill for it. So taking the spread, the gap between the two numbers, a portion of that should be used for lifestyle. Great, you worked hard to get to where you are, but you should also take a portion of that and begin doing long-term planning for yourself to, one, account for things that may happen in your life, and two, to account for that looming tax bill in the future. So it is not truly forgiven. And then so debt's really weird. So I heard a quote from a mentor of mine early in my career. He said, math is not money, and money is not math, right? All the things that we talk about, really, you could map out mathematically and see how they would work, but it doesn't work that way in the real world. When we start talking about money, people have a very different reaction, right? When it comes to debt, people have a visceral reaction to debt. Some people just want the debt gone, or they just want it gone, irrespective of what the math says, right? And others will see the math and say, okay, well, I'd like to use that money or repurpose that money for myself, right? So, because I'm guessing you probably got like, what, 5 or 6 different student loans?
Yes.
Yeah, average interest rate probably on all of them. If you averaged it out, probably 6.5%?
Yes.
Yeah? Yeah.
I just refinance it.
Did you, so you refinance it?
Yes.
Did you already do it?
Yes.
Who'd you refinance it with?
Lower World.
Mm-hmm. So that's an interesting question we get a lot as well. Like, should I refinance my student loans? Refinancing student loans, I think, is really, really great if you have stable work and you work in a practice that you enjoy being in and you're going to continue being there. Because the moment you leave the government-based repayment programs, you lose the flexibility that you have with the government-based repayment program. You can bounce in and out into the different repayment options. If you were to lose your job, you can go into forbearance. You've just got a lot of freedom inside the government loans that you give up. You pay the price, there's a trade-off in everything, right? The trade-off for refinancing and getting a lower interest rate is you have less flexibility. Because that bank is gonna want, just like we talked about you, the bank's gonna want their money. The bank's gonna want their money every month no matter what happens. The bank is going to get their money. So I don't necessarily recommend refinancing until you are in a practice and working somewhere where you believe you're going to be for a little bit, or you've got that stable income coming in. If you're there, the refinance can be a great move. So it's just, again, like what you guys said earlier, what's the right answer? It depends. It does depend on everyone's situation, whether a refinance of student loans should be done, or just keeping them where they're at inside of the government programs. And then speaking to the overpayment of student loans. Again, so that's that visceral reaction, how we feel. Because mathematically, can you go back to the calculator?
So let's say present value, I'll just pick a number so you don't have to share your actual number. Let's say $300,000 of student loans, okay? And you've got that growth rate of 6.5%. That's actually going to be amortized, so it's going to be getting paid down. And let's say on the other side of things, you've got the present value of 0, and you've got an annual contribution of, say, $48,000, right? That $48,000 repurposed for yourself can grow to be a rather large number. So you mentioned wanting to buy a practice at some point, I think earlier, right? The reason I'll talk to young dentists oftentimes about not overpaying on student loans initially is because I want them to have that money on their own balance sheet. So in 10 years, if you want to buy a practice and you've got a large block of money sitting there in your account, you can utilize that money to purchase a practice, right? You can't call the government and say, hey, give me my money back, I want to buy this practice. It's theirs now. They're not giving it back to you, it's the bank. So you're going to have to get a new loan. They're hanging on to it. So when I think in terms of planning, I like to think of freedom of choice. So if I've got 2 dentists and dentist A repays all of their student loans aggressively as quickly as they possibly can, while dentist B saves a bunch of their money, pays the minimum on their student loans, and has this large block of cash sitting there available to them. In 10 years, they each have an opportunity to buy into a practice. Dentist A has spent all of his money or her money paying off her student loans, whereas dentist B has a bunch of money sitting there. Who's able to buy into the practice right away? Dennis B. In 10 years, Dennis B wakes up and says, gosh, that guy Travis that spoke to us was crazy. That guy was the worst advisor I've ever seen in my life. I've got all this money that I owe in student loans. Can she take the money that she saved and now just pay off her student loans? If she wanted to? The one who saved the money? Yeah. At any point, dentist B could become dentist A, but dentist A couldn't become dentist B. Freedom of capital, freedom of choice. Again, now I'm going to completely contradict what I just said. Debt is very visceral. People have a very different reaction to debt. Some people just want it gone. So if you feel that way and you just want it gone, you're going to feel better, you're going to sleep at night, that's okay too, right? But understanding freedom of choice and having that money sitting on your balance sheet is equally powerful. So it's a much more involved conversation about what goals are for someone, where they want to end up, and how they eventually want to use that capital. We want to make sure that you have freedom of choice, so you can potentially just have that money redeployed however you want, as opposed to having to go back to the bank and get insurance and do all that crazy stuff. Questions on any of that? Okay, I think that is my time. So a bit.
So, quick investment advice.
Yes.
For old or new dentists,
Mm-hmm.
what's your recommendation?
I believe in, so there's two schools of thought when it pertains to investing. You have what's called active management, and you have what's called passive or structured management of investments. Active, we could do an entire other thing on just this, I think, probably for you. Active management believes, if you're going to go out there and invest by yourself, I would recommend using low-cost Vanguard index funds. That's the easiest way to invest. It's going to be very low cost for you. The issue around investing, though, it's not usually the investment choices. It's the behavior around investments, right? So I'll say to my clients, I don't earn my money in up years, I earn my money in down market years, right? Because it's when everything in life is behavior. I graduated high school, I was 205 pounds. I'm like 255 pounds now. Bad behavior. I move less, I eat more, bad behavior, right? Easy to lose weight. Eat less, move more. When we get done, gonna have a slice of that pizza. Bad behavior. Bad behavior. Investing is the same way, right? So the market's been super volatile the last few months. And I get calls every day from clients that say, hey, maybe we should pull back, or maybe we should do something different. Maybe we should move to cash. And that's when people get punished. It's the behavior around investments. You've got to have good behavior. If you're investing for the long term, finding out what your personal risk tolerance is, and we can help with that, and staying disciplined and staying put in your investments is the best course of action. It's when people move in and out of the market, trying to time the market, they get absolutely bludgeoned. There's a company called Dalbar that studies investor rates of return, and the average investor rate of return is around 4%, whereas the market itself has returned closer to 12, and that's because of bad behavior, right? It's because, in 2008, someone loses 40% in their 401k, and then they pull all their money out, or they move it all to cash, and then in 2009, the market goes back up by 40%, right? If they would have stayed disciplined, if they would have stayed invested, they would have recaptured the vast majority of their money, and in the following year they would have had it all back and made a profit, right? It's getting punished for those bad decisions, right? You can't time the market. Markets are fast, markets are efficient. So if you're going to do it by yourself, I'd recommend Vanguard. If you're going to do it, I just don't recommend doing it by yourself. It goes back to everything I said at the beginning. The cost of an advisor who's going to keep your behavior in check when you want to eat the pizza, when it's all said and done, is going to far out. People get caught up in fees a lot of times. Right? I'm paying the advisor this fee. If I just did it myself, I'd save that money. But the money you're going to save from not making the bad decisions will pay for itself in spades, I believe. That's a wrap. Yes. No. Yeah.
Maybe it's a misconception on my part, but I feel like I'm so far in the negative that when should I get a financial advisor in my team?
Yeah.
So having student loans, having practice loans, I mean.
If you have a good advisor.
Sorry, but
Yeah.
maybe restate that question because it's probably
Oh.
a lot of everyone on the video.
Yeah,
A
that's
lot of
actually
things, but-
great at this. Get this guy on the payroll. The question was, when should I get an advisor? You know, I've got a bunch of student loan debt, I'm buying a practice. Do I need an advisor early on in my life when I've got all these other expenses and all of these other debts? I believe if you've got a good advisor, they should be there at the very beginning. Because they're going to help coordinate and work with you on all of those things. I built a lot of my firm around working with young dentists. I like you guys, but I'm not completely altruistic. I'm obviously running a for-profit business. My belief and hope was, and it's come to fruition, was that I was going to work with young dentists, and as their careers grew, my firm was going to grow right along with their careers as well. So we were okay doing a lot of the work that I'm talking about tonight. Right? There's no compensation in it for us for helping you with your student loans and picking right repayment strategies, or making sure your will and trust work is done, or making sure your property and casualty insurance limits are taken care of. But we knew that if we were to do those things for our younger clients when the time came, that they didn't need to make real world financial decisions, they were going to call us. That, hey, that guy Travis helped me out with a lot of stuff in years past, and he's been with us, and he helped us find this great CPA and all of these other people that we've worked with. They're now a part of the team. So I think it's never too early, I think, to begin finding someone to work, because they'll have those conversations, if they're good, right? I mean, they're going to help you and have those conversations around all that stuff.
I'll jump in real quick and throw the props back to Travis as well, because you'll find, and from an accountant standpoint, we get hit with financial advisors all the time. People want to have access to our clients, and so it's constantly getting hit with them. I've seen a ton of them. One of the common things is, and I know multiple that are this way, that I can tell you before, regardless of what the situation is, what they're going to do for you, because they're always going to put you in the same product as what pays them the most. We've been working with Travis for a couple of years now, and it's a unique thing that you find, and that's what you want, is someone that's going to be able to look at your situation and say, let's do what's best for you, and however he gets, however that pays him, but that might be zero, it might be more, and kind of bank on that. So, but that's who you're looking for ultimately, for
Yeah.
sure. And Travis is one of those guys.
Thanks. Blushing. But I think for us, like, anyone who's been in Vegas for a while knows that Vegas is a small town, right? So our reputation of doing good work inside the dental community was far more important to us than, how do we make a quick buck off of a client. So thanks, buddy. All right, now I'm gonna have some.